All right, welcome everybody. Episode 636, Talking Buffalo, part of the Blue Wire Network. I am your host, Patrick Moran. Thank you, as always, for locking in today, whether you're listening in audio podcast form, whether you're checking us out on the YouTube. Appreciate you very much. We've moved on, for the most part, past this Miami game, and we are on to Jacksonville. I am joined by a good friend of mine, recurring guest, Aaron Quinn from Cover One. Yo, my
Yo,
man, it is early October. We talked briefly for a couple of minutes before we started rolling the tape here. And you warned me, don't burn content. So I started going on a Gabe Davis rant. We'll talk about that in just a few minutes. But you're golfing still, man. It's October. It's been beautiful out. Still enjoying it, man. Grabbing the sticks and being able to hit the course in October in Buffalo. Not something you should take for granted, man.
one, I'm sure people are sick of seeing it. Nobody cares but me and a couple of my golf friends. But yeah, no. And actually, Pat, I don't know if I told you, dude. I like 3 weeks ago, I had a pretty big scare. When I dropped the kids off, did 2 days in a row, but my back was a little bit tight on the second day, and I kept
Yeah.
going. I kept going. I ended up not being able to play through. Put my back in a spasm. Real bad shape. Like going to the doctors, going to get emergency chiropractor. I really thought I was done. I was actually getting myself ready for a golf event. We did a Ryder Cup style event, my golf group. We went to Terry Hills, where Jim Kelly has his year thing. Great freaking course.
It is.
What a
Hilly.
challenge.
It's very hilly.
Oh, I played terrible, Pat. It was the back nine just destroyed me, destroyed my confidence. My wife was like, "How'd you do?" And the only thing I could come up with is, that the video, the gif of the little kid being asked by the reporter like how the first day of school was, and he's just like, "Good." And then he starts like crying. Like that was my golf game that weekend. And then but so I was leading up to that, and I got this injury. I didn't think I was gonna be able to play. Like my whole back was in a spasm. I was like, this might be it for the whole season. I got undone. Still a little tightness, but I've been out golfing, dude. I've been out golfing a lot. So we did Terry Hills, and then we did Brian Cliff, this past weekend. I played much better. Another awesome course. People were super cool, really nice. We got out really early, but this type of weather that we've had here, unbelievable, Pat. Yesterday I was out at Sheridan Park Golf Club. And it was like 75 degrees at 10 o'clock in the morning. Like, what a perfect day.
Yeah, I got to next year I'm gonna unretire from golf, and
That's
I
what
got
I
to get
did.
back out there. What's up?
That's what I did. I played a ton as a kid and young, and went
Me too.
15 to something, almost 20 years, 17 years without playing, and just what you'll feel it. You'll hit a couple of those shots, and you'll be back with me.
You know, it's funny, when I did play all the time, it was pre-Twitter, or at least for me, pre-Twitter anyway.
Yeah.
And most of my friends didn't really play. And sometimes it was hard to grab somebody to play with. But now on Twitter, all these media people I know that are obsessed with golf, including you, it's never hard to be able to grab somebody and get on a course.
And you know what? Yesterday I went solo. Like sometimes it's also nice to just go and play a solo round, and you end up meeting up with people. This summer, I've posted 40 rounds since spring, which is for me quite a bit of golf, and I've done it both ways. I have a group, we go all the time. It's a pretty easy to find people, but some of those weird ones that I go real early in the morning or now during the week here, I post up with other people, and people are super cool out on the golf. Like I've never met like real shitty people on the golf course.
Yeah, when I used to play all the time, I used to go to Grover. It's easy course, pretty wide open, flat. But it was 15 minutes from my house, and it cost you less than $20 to grab a cart or whatever and just walk around the course. It was always fun. So for today's show, Bills, Jags in London. We're obviously gonna talk about that. Got some Gabe Davis stuff. I easily can make this a DaQuan Jones appreciation episode today. That's how much I've been impressed with him. I'll talk to you about him. We're going to have a starting five list of our most overrated TV shows. That'll be a little bit later on. A couple things I want to get to before that. I follow you on Twitter, man, and sometimes I love the things that you tweet about. Sometimes I'm like, this was one of them, man. We didn't talk about this before the show. You have a tweet. Let me put it up here. So the Bills.
Oh, whatever. This is because you're old. Let's go. Charge your battery sooner and then talk to me. Let's go.
The best. Aaron, if you're listening to this and not watching it, Aaron is convinced already that Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs is the best wide receiver and quarterback combo to ever suit up for the Buffalo Bills. pretty ambitious, bro. I'm not gonna lie to you, man. Jim Kelly, Andre Reed. Come on, really? Already?
Stop it. I said this like a couple years ago. Like, dude, Josh Allen has thrown a perfect football game. Absolute perfection. He almost did it again. And here's the thing. Everything we talk about in sports, whether it's fair or not to the people, really does have to be graded on a curve of the timeline that it occurred in. And the NFL now has never been more competitive. It has never been harder to build the team. This is why I say Sean McDermott's a better coach than Marv Levy. It's why I say Brandon Beane's a better general manager than Polian. Even though those teams had further success, they got to Super Bowls. I think it was easier to build teams and maintain your talent than it is in the salary cap era. Like, you can't remove that fact from sports and how teams are being built. There's parities now built into the league, where in the 90s you didn't have that. Like, and even free agency wasn't what it is today. Like, you're going to see there's conversations on Twitter today, Pat, about like legitimate moves of player for player trade swaps mid-season. Like, NFL is different now than it was in the 90s in terms of being able to build your roster and maintain it and stay competitive. And the Bills have done that, granted, not at the Super Bowl level, but at a very high level next to a dynasty like Kansas City during this time period, right? Like, who else has been a more steady presence over the past 5-6 seasons than the Buffalo Bills, other than the Kansas City Chiefs? Maybe San Francisco. Like, what other teams are up there consistently winning their division, having a shot at being a Super Bowl team, quarterback putting up elite stats, wide receiver putting up elite stats? I said it, like, Stephon Diggs, even now, not even talking all-time Bills, just now in terms of the NFL, doesn't get the appreciation that he deserves. He's probably the best wide receiver over the past 5 years. I think, Devontae Adams probably has a legitimate argument. I think Justin Jefferson will have that argument if you add in another couple years, but Steph's been doing it a little bit longer and at the same productivity level as Jefferson. So I think when you take him over a snapshot of since he's been a Buffalo Bill, he's the best wide receiver in all of football in the period of time where, again, it's the hardest to maintain that type of level of continuity. And so I think it does need to be graded on a curve. This is not disrespect to Jim Kelly or Andre Reed. Dude, Andre Reed is right up over my shoulder here. Like, I love these players. I got Jim Kelly all blasted all over my wall. I have a helmet over here. Like, I think people hear me say stuff like that, and I do say it with my own passion and conviction. And you're welcome to think I'm wrong, but I think there's a legitimate case that right now, these guys, like, I could go through a whole list of the best the Buffalo Bills have ever had, and it's going to have a lot from this current era.
Your video background, by the way, if you are watching us on YouTube, you've stepped your game up big time over the last year. So you should just have that blank ass wall, like one little thing on it, man. Looks pretty dope. Now,
stuff takes time. Hey,
I don't disagree with anything you said. I think Jim Kelly, right? I should say, I'm sorry. I think Josh Allen is the most talented quarterback the Bills have ever had. I think Stephon Diggs is the most talented wide receiver the Bills ever had. For me, though, I just can't go there yet because it's only Stephon's fourth year. I need a little more. I need more time. I need two more years maybe of Josh to Diggs, but doing what they're doing right now, then maybe I'll say that. I think Reed was like the Bills' top receiver for 9 years. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
4 AFC championships. I do agree with you that players, generally are better now, and it was easier to build a team back then and keep a team. No question about it. I still say, though, I need a couple more years. I need a couple more years before I could say that. I think they're the most talented, though. I think Stephon Diggs is a better wide receiver than Andre Reed ever was.
Yeah, like if you
call the best duel, though,
you can't do it, right? Because you can't like plop a player in a different generation. But like,
sure.
you like if you're watching Stephon Diggs again, and this is no disrespect, I love Andre Reed, what he was doing at his time. He was awesome, like great yards after catch, ability to do a lot of things. He's a Hall of Fame player. Like, I'm not taking anything away from him. This is not a disrespectful thing, but
yeah, for sure.
The way Diggs does it, like, it's beautiful. Like talent wise, I've never seen anything like it. And I want to praise it as much as possible without, I don't think it's hyperbolic, the things that I'm saying. So I'm trying not to be like over the top hyperbolic, but also put in reference how good it is now so that we appreciate it the right way.
Yeah, look, these guys are headed towards the Hall of Fame, Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs, if they keep doing what they're doing. But to me, it's like,
I mean, every single week, dude, you get
there.
Those tweets that you're showing me are popping up every single week of them just shattering all-time record, first QB in history to put up whatever it is, this many rushing touchdowns and that many that. Like, it was like it's almost, honestly, it's almost every single week the way they're playing right now.
I think Stefan's first 3 years in Buffalo are better than any of Andre's best seasons in Buffalo, and this year he's on pace to even have his best season so far early on. Anyway, one other thing too, and this has got nothing to do with the Bills. I got a good kick out of this because you're right, man. You are 100% right on this. It has to do with Aaron Rodgers.
All right, so he was on the Pat.
He was on the Pat. No, I want to talk about this for a second, man. He was on the Pat McAfee show earlier this week. Travis Kelce, if you watch the TV commercials, he's been doing some spots for Pfizer vaccinations. And Aaron Rodgers, semi tongue in cheek, maybe talked about he was talking about the Jets Chiefs game from Sunday night. And he said our defense played really well. Mr. Pfizer didn't have a crazy impact on the game. Talking about Kelce. And then you tweeted, classic Rodgers whines like a victim when he's called names and ridiculed over his ideologies and beliefs, then turns and does this to others. I wanted to highlight that tweet because I couldn't fucking agree with you more. I hate Aaron Rodgers so much. And this is going to sound messed up. I'll never root for somebody to be injured ever, just because of the juju. I just feel like it's bad juju. But if there's anyone in the history of sports where I might have less sympathy for somebody who tore their Achilles, it's Aaron Rodgers. I hate this dude, man. I hate him. I hate him as a person. And good on you for calling that dickhead out publicly on Twitter.
It definitely got like, this is the problem with anything on the internet, is like there's going to be 20-30% of the people are just going to take no matter what you say and how you try to phrase it the wrong way. And I should have known better because it was such a high topic, politicized issue of getting into anything related to the vaccine. But I wasn't trying to make it like, it was really just about, it's the same thing I talk about with the live golfers and just like these people that are in such a position in life and they act so entitled and so hypocritical. Like, also, there's a follow-up tweet to there talking about how Aaron Rodgers plays for Woody Johnson, who owns Johnson & Johnson Pharmaceuticals. So like, you also still are a hypocrite. And so like, if you're going to be like kind of douchey, making douchey jokes about something, and I'm sure he's just going to laugh it off as like, haha, I was just playing around with Travis. Like, I love him. No disrespect. Whatever, but he was trying to take a pot shot and make a point that he's tried to dig his heels on his point. Like, I don't even care anymore if people, whatever you want to do it. That isn't the point I'm trying to make. Is
I know
to me, he just looks like such a douchebag every time he tries to do something like this. And I'm kind of over it. Just talk about the game. You don't have to make this additional pot shot, draw this attention to it. But I took the bait. I ran right to it, and that is kind of what he wants. And then he's going to look like a victim when he's like, oh, everybody comes at me anytime I have an opinion. I'm just sick of that too. Like I can say whatever I want, and then I'm a victim anytime there's backlash.
I'm so over him.
Anyways, come on, let's talk about the Bills.
I cannot stand it. Well, they're in, I don't know if they're in London yet. Are the Bills in London yet?
I think tomorrow.
Okay.
Well, so we're recording Wednesday here. So when people are listening, they, I believe, will be traveling to London. Sean McDermott said traveling Thursday, I believe, on his press conference.
Well, there's a lot of fans already in London, and there's a lot of media either on their way as we record this or already there as well. I was going to ask you if you have any regrets that you're not in London, because this is something, but it's harder for somebody like you too. You have young kids, school started, and
sure,
that's a long trip when you have little kids like that. To be honest, man, I'm happy for people. I'm seeing so many pictures. I got a lot of friends who are in London, and I'm seeing some amazing scenery, some great photos, and it's kind of got me all kinds of peanut butter and jelly, man. I'm jealous. I'm not going to lie. I regret going, or not going, I should say. I'm going on a cruise in February. And if I could take it back, I think I would rather be in London this week. Maybe that's because it's going on right now, but come February,
I want you to rain check that
going
thought.
On a cruise.
I'm going to check with you when you're on your cruise and see if you really regret being out on a cruise during February.
The London trip is also significantly more expensive than the cruise, but
yeah,
you don't have any regrets that you kind of could go back and not plan it. Like, you're good being here in Western New York.
Straight up, no disrespect to anyone that enjoys football in London or wanted to make a trip out of this. Do you let people like things? I'm all for it. I'm happy for you if you enjoy it. I can't express how much football in London overseas annoys this piss out of me. Like, I know I'm labeled as that guy that's always complaining about stuff and nobody cares and yelling at the clouds. This is one of those things, dude. It's
old man yelling.
Honestly, this is one of the big ones for me. That Thursday night football, people were yelling at me because I wasn't yelling loud enough about Thursday night football. Like, I also hate that. Like, I don't want teams traveling to London. I don't want a team based in London. I'm happy that the game's expanding. I think it will expand with or without the NFL actually playing football there. Like, it's a good product. It displays well on TV. People like it. It gambles well. So, like, the world's going to get drawn to the game just with exposure. I understand the greed aspect of it, but I hate every bit of it. It's just another notch in the things that I hate about the NFL, even though I cover it and like it. It's the stadium, the way they build stadiums. It's the way they're constantly expanding. Like, at some point, I think the greed is going to ruin the product. I don't know when that is. I don't know how far they can push it, but I do think Thursday night football dilutes the product. You see a lot of shitty matchups on primetime football. It's not fun. The more they put one-on-one matchup, like, football's the best when it's red zone, Sunday at 1, and you get into the witching hour and all the game, like, maybe not all the games are close, but you throw out those trash games because there's so much attention on 3 or 4 games that are going. Like, that's when the NFL is at its best. Sometimes when you put it in these primetime slots or make more primetime games, and I get there's money to be made off networks and to have more one-on-one showings, but it sometimes dilutes the product. And I think, I don't have the data to back it up, but I've seen a lot of bad football, mostly because it's been the Jacksonville Jaguars representing the NFL in London. But it's not just been the Jaguars, and there's been a lot of bad football in these overseas games. I don't think it helps the NFL. I do think people said it's not different than traveling to LA in terms of player safety. I think it's pretty disruptive to organizations. I think disruption leads to player safety issues. I also think there's a big difference in going one way versus the other in terms of your body and sleep, and players aren't used to it. And so you kind of heard Sean McDermott sort of complaining about it being a disruption to the way of the week. And now you have a team that's able to stay there for 2 weeks. I think NFL's greed gets in the way sometimes of let's just keep it simple and play football and put some good teams out there and worry about player safety.
From a football perspective, I couldn't agree more. I agree with every single thing you said when it comes to football. Doesn't change the fact that I still wish I was in London right now.
Yeah, I mean,
seeing some sights, partying, just so much fun going on besides the football part of it itself.
I'm sure the NFL puts on a good show too. Like, the draft was a great experience. I'm sure when they are in London, there's a lot of cool things to do NFL related. So I'm sure it's a cool experience. I'm not trying to take, again, right. Pat, you know me, dude. It's all, I get so focused on the football aspect. I just want the competitive. It's my same conversation about getting rid of training camp in Rochester. I don't find it a competitive advantage. It's not. I appreciate it for fans that live out there and get to go, but I only care about how do the Bills win more games. That's it.
Well, that's fair. And by the way, next week I'll have Anthony Marino from Rumblings on. He actually is in London right now, just taking his son on a trip. So I'm looking forward to finding out some of this, hearing about some of the sights and sounds.
Yeah, get this hater out of here.
No, well, we're going to do the anti-hate because we're going to talk, before we talk Jacksonville, I should say, 2 dudes that I just want to kind of appreciate through the first month of the season. And one of them is Gabe Davis. And I got to tell you, Aaron, so on Tuesday, I put out a tweet and, a little bit surprised at the reaction to it. And I said, not sure what your expectations for a really good number 2 wide receiver is, but in 4 games this season, Gabe Davis has 12 catches for 220 yards and 3 touchdowns. He also has just 1 drop. And most impressively to me, 11 of his 12 catches have resulted in a first down or touchdown.
Yeah.
That's really solid. I think he's been really good, man. And I was surprised, man, in my mentions. I mean, there was a lot of people who agreed, but there was more people than I could have imagined that were still kind of hating on him a little bit, or he's not doing enough. They want more.
Yeah.
I'm like, what's this? What is this offense supposed to do? And we were talking about this, and this is when you told me basically to shut up and save it for the show. But you just said Stefon Diggs might be the best receiver in the NFL right now. He's certainly been since he's come to Buffalo during his time here. You have him. You have other receivers. You have 2 tight end sets. You want to run more 11 personnel, or 12 personnel. You want to run the ball more effectively. There's only one football, man. I don't get it. What do you expect from Gabe Davis? And I'm sick of that term, number 2 receiver, by the way. Like, what's your thoughts on him right now? How you think he's playing this year, and just some of the negative reaction. I'm going to read a couple tweets after you give me your thoughts.
Yeah, so like right now, sorry for people watching, looking away. I should have done this before the show, but some stuff I'm looking at real quick is just like league wide, EPA. For instance, is a stat that I like to look at. Stefon Diggs is, I think, 5th in total EPA in the league, and Gabe Davis is like 17th in total EPA. So from a production standpoint, you're right. Like what he's able to do when targeted has been, I think, at the level that I think probably above typical wide receiver, right? Like he's a high variance player. We know this when Gabe Davis touches the ball, it's big plays. Like, so that's not a bad thing. I don't think we should knock that. I think what we need to look at is you start talking about targets per route run, and he's last, right? He's 0.13 targets per route run. And so I don't know that if you give him more targets, you're necessarily going to bring that data set with you and he's just going to continue to make the big plays. But this has been the problem sort of with Gabe Davis this whole time. Isn't always what he's able to do. I think that ability wise, he's shown the ability to be a good number 2 wide receiver in the NFL. It's just in this offense where progressions are going. And here's a thing that's frustrated me with Bills Mafia. This has come up with Stefon Diggs before, with one, unrealistic expectations of league-wide numbers for guys. Like you hear people during Stefon Diggs' run here, there's been calls for he needs to be targeted more like a true number 1 wide receiver. That has been a narrative multiple seasons. But every season when I start looking into actual data, he's like top 5 every single time throughout the spread of the season. He's top 5 wide receiver targeted, in top 5 in like reception. So no, he doesn't need to be targeted any exponentially more than Devontae Adams is, I just think that we have an unrealistic expectation of what those numbers look like. And so that happened again last year with Gabe Davis and that number 2 wide receiver role or number 2 playmaker role. I looked up who got the number 2 amount of targets in any given offense and compared their data to Gabe Davis. He was fine. He was right there in the mix. Like he's not the best. He's not T. Higgins, but he was right there in the mix with everybody. And so I think expectations matter. But more importantly, the Bills have a number of players making plays, and we want Josh Allen, right, to play within the offense. Isn't that what we talked about? Week 1 is not forcing balls. And so if he's taking that check to Kincaid because it's part of the progression and open, that removes, like, there's only one ball to go around. We want him to get those 10 targets to Stefon Diggs, and we want him to get some targets to Cook. Like, every time you do give a target to Gabe Davis, it takes away from somewhere else. So are we going to penalize Gabe Davis because he plays in a good offense with a number of playmakers and his quarterback's taking what's given and they're putting up big points, and he is part of that production, but the volume isn't to our liking? Like, that's my problem, is like we can't control where the ball goes or where the volume goes, but you can see Gabe Davis winning routes, and when he does get targeted, he's productive with it. So how do we penalize him because sometimes the ball isn't going his way?
If you want to talk about maybe in the offseason and let's not pay the man $13 million a season next year, that's an argument I could understand. But I hate the term. I hate the term number 2 receiver at this point. To me, you have weapons. There's weapons on the football team. And it's like, all right, so again, you if you don't throw the ball to Kincaid, we're wasting a number 1 pick on a tight end. We don't even throw the ball to. You're not running the ball. Then it's like, well, you can't win in January when it gets cold out if you're not running the football.
Yeah, and we're wasting Cook. He's elite.
You're wasting Cook on a rookie contract. And then if Stefon Diggs isn't getting enough targets, you're going to piss him off. The man, he wants the football and he's not going to be happy. And again, there's only one football. To me,
and then you still also got Knox and Sherfield and Hardy, who are like, you got guys that are demanding getting some touches. Like this is the best problem to have, and we somehow have found a way to turn it into something to complain about. Here's the real thing. Like, there's a scenario like this is playing out, which ended up being actually a win for the Bills because they were able to replace Tremaine Edmonds seemingly. At least so far early season, we have not felt the loss of Tremaine Edmonds, but this Gabe Davis thing is probably playing out the same way. Greg brought it up on our show last week, or the post-game show, that Bills fans can say what they want about the lack of volume, but his production and what he's put on tape, somebody's going to pay that.
Yeah. By the way, shout out Greg Thompson, reached 30,000 followers on Twitter.
Crazy.
It's really impressive for somebody who, who has alternative media, who's not part of the mainstream media. Greg's just a popular dude, and it's great to see that. Anyway, yeah, look, when it comes to Gabe, I don't give a shit how many targets he gets or even how many catches or how many yards. You know what I care about? If good things happen when the ball's thrown to him. That's what I care about. He's had a history of drops coming into this season. Yeah. Again, he's got one drop. He's got 12 catches this year, and 11 of them have moved to change, or the ball's been in the end zone.
It's hard to catch balls from Josh Allen. I'm just going to say that right now. Privately,
sure. I couldn't be more happier with Gabe Davis. That's kind of my point of all this. I'm just going to read, like maybe two of these tweets from other people. Shots of the Ruck says, it's the context of those numbers. He was schemed open for the touchdown on Sunday. Oh, God forbid, Ken Dorsey makes a good call and you're going to criticize that. Some of his bigger catches came on scramble drills. He still doesn't separate well, and that's okay. Dorsey seems to understand his role and he's playing well, but he's no wide receiver 2. Here we go with that term again. Dude named Jeff. I want a wide receiver 2 that gets more than 3 catches a game. There's literally running backs getting that. Rocket Man, in a top 5 offense, you want better numbers from your number 2. Again, it's just Aaron. And hold on, I got one more too. I want to read off. Aubrey, he could be used more, but that's more so on Dorsey. All right, so just by these tweets, he's not a wide receiver 2. He's not getting enough targets, and also Ken Dorsey, I guess, just doesn't know how to use him better. What is the offense not averaging 41 points a game over these last 3 games, or the team, I should say, because the defense is contributed, but still, man, this offense is clicking right now.
Right.
I just don't get it, man.
Yeah, there's so much that goes into this position too. Like, it's really super frustrating in so many positions. It's the same conversation we're probably going to have continuously about the cornerbacks now that Trey White's hurt, and the stuff that just doesn't show up on the stat sheet when you go look it up. Like the target, like he's a good blocker. He knows where he's supposed to be. This guy's a captain. He was voted as a captain by his teammates. Like, there's parts that he provides to this offense that don't get seen, that show up. And again, he's productive. It's the lack of targets. And at the end of the season, Pat, my biggest complaint about the way the offense looked, like they still were putting up the historical numbers, but it felt like they were laboring to do it and relying on Josh Allen to just pull off just the most incredible stuff. This year, it feels like it's not labored. They're doing it with that type of, hey, we're going to go out and be a train and just go down the field and take what's given to us the last 3 weeks anyway. And that's kudos to Ken Dorsey. My problem with the lack of production from Dawson Knox, the lack of production from Gabe Davis last year, was Dorsey not being able to scheme them to what I believe is their talents and get them open. So then now we're going to use that against, again, like some of the ways we use arguments against people, to me, doesn't make a ton of sense. So I would love for somebody to explain to me how that is a bad thing, that Ken Dorsey's getting schemed looks and Gabe Davis is capitalizing on those targets. I think it's good. I want to see Gabe Davis be more part of this offense. If it stalls out at any point, I think that I would like to see how it looks when he's forced some looks. Say, this is again the problem. We haven't seen a defense really take away stuff on Diggs. And so to me, what does make a really true number 2 wide receiver is, hey, we're struggling to get Diggs going and get the ball. We need a ball go to somewhere else. Who is going to step up? That's where years past you saw Beasley step up and roll, where like they're bracketing coverage Diggs. We haven't seen that though yet. Like, we haven't needed somebody to step up in a spot where Diggs hasn't gotten going.
Yeah, there might come a game where you need Gabe Davis to have 6-7 catches for $130 and 2 touchdowns, and that's going to be the difference between winning or losing. But that shit ain't right now. It's not right now. And again, Hardy and Shakir, they don't get if they don't get their touches, you're like, well, Dorsey's, these guys are useless. It just annoys the shit out of me, man. Gabe Davis is just playing some really good football. And speaking of DaQuan Jones, dude, I can't tell you how much of a fan I've become of this man this season.
Yeah.
Just kind of took it for granted a little bit last year, and because he didn't really put up any kind of eye-popping numbers. He was just a good run plugger, it seemed. And then that Bengals playoff game, he didn't play, and we saw what happened in the defensive line. He just got bullied. This year, he's playing great, and he's putting up numbers. He's like in the top 10 in PFF, all kinds of the premium stats among his peers at his position. This dude is just playing great, and I would even argue, Aaron, maybe over the first 4 weeks of the season, if we were going to have a little quarter mark, offensive, defensive MVP show, stuff like that, I feel like I can make a pretty strong case that DaQuan Jones might be my defensive MVP of the Buffalo Bills so far this year.
Maybe he's definitely making a run at it. I loved him last year. I do think he presented more of the pass rush ability and penetrating interior defensive line play last year than we had seen from him in years past. And that we had seen out of that position for the Bills in years past, right? Like that's been the Star Lotulelei. We just need the guy to plug the gap and keep linebackers clean. He is able to do that and take on that type of space, but he's also able to penetrate upfield, and the Bills have been using him like that dating back to last year. And so I love what he presents. Also, it helps Ed Oliver's playing out of his goddamn mind right now with his hair on fire. So the two of them working together is just creating all kinds of havoc and ability. Like you really can't put as much attention on either one of them as you'd probably like to or need to have success. And then you add in really solid, Leonard Floyd, the way he's playing, like you can't just leave him one-on-one. Greg Rousseau has been playing really great. AJ Epinesa has made a number of really good plays, right? Like, so you have some depth. Vaughn's coming back. So I only expect to see with this type of depth continued play to this level. I don't see why it would decrease. They are we talk about it all the time in the post-game show, the gauntlet you have to run through of interior linemen, of our own interior offensive line getting tested week in and week out. What we just went through with the Commanders. Dude, Miami's no slouch. Christian Wilkins, like some of these dudes that you're blocking week in and week out. Well, I'll tell you, dude, the Bills, they're up there in terms of those teams. Like what other teams have to prepare for is probably worse coming out of the Buffalo interior defensive line right now than other teams have to deal with. You talked about some of the PFF stuff. Probably my favorite stat that PFF tracks and puts out during the year for defensive linemen is PRP, which is their pass rush productivity. That is one. The reason I like this is it puts into context the amount of times you're doing it. And it puts into context how many pass rush snaps, and it not just sacks. So it's hits, pressures, and sacks. Every time you're creating a pressure on the quarterback, it counts. And DaQuan Jones is number one amongst all interior defensive players with a 12.5. But when you add in defensive linemen and linebackers who should be getting way more pressures on average, he's still number 7. That's right crazy. There. Again, there's a small sample size of that 4-game samples, but 4 games ain't nothing, right? Like this isn't a 2-game sample size. Like this is a trend in a direction that's, I think I said on Sunday, both of those players, I don't know if they'll be deserving of it, or I think they'll be deserving of it. I don't know if they'll actually get it, but right now, DaQuan Jones and Ed Oliver both trending and playing towards all pro caliber levels. They should at least be in the conversation if they keep going.
4 games in the NFL is equivalent to like 20 games in the NBA or 40 games in baseball, man. It's pretty much a quarter of your season. There was a point in the Miami game Sunday. I started laughing at one point to myself. Kingsley Jonathan flushed 2 out of the pocket and nearly had a sack. He was falling down as he threw the ball. And I'm thinking to myself, this is their 5th defensive end. This is the 9th defensive lineman in this lineup on the active roster. And then Poona Ford is not even active, and he's good. And then you don't even have Von Miller back. This is, if there's a deeper defensive line unit in the NFL, I'd love to see it. I know a lot of people talk about Philly, but right now, Josh Allen is obviously Josh Allen, Stephon. But to me, the biggest strength, and you kind of hit on this, I think the defensive line so far through 4 games has been the best part, the most consistent part for sure of the Buffalo Bills this season. Just awesome.
I will push back on the MVP thing. I think Jones is in the running. I think Milano's still ahead. Matt Milano's playing some crazy football this year. And I think sneaky Taron Johnson. And I am going to continue to trumpet that he is not getting enough credit, love, respect, like all this talk about what the Bills were going to change about their defense and all these different looks they were going to give. They are still a nickel team. Like they are coming out, and that it's just Taron Johnson. Like Taron Johnson is the linchpin of this defense, and it's one of the top defense. This defense continues to get better. in my opinion. Like Sean McDermott has them playing at an entirely different level. So I would push back a little bit there that I think it might be Milano or Taryn would be my MVPs right now.
It's a little bit early and he's not there yet, but maybe if we talk about this at the halfway point, Micah Hyde might throw his name up in there too.
Maybe.
Interceptions 2 straight weeks. His PFF grade has been really high. He looks like he's all the way back, man.
While we're talking about Jones and this line and stuff like that, I was handing out a lot of respect and credit to people that don't always get it in this Bills organization. One of them was Eric Washington. He's gotten a lot of guff over the last few years, right? That Boogie Basham didn't work out. AJ Epinesa hasn't worked out. He's gotten all these assets. We haven't gotten the sacks. We haven't gotten the type of pressures. The pressures have been there. This defensive line has created havoc for years. It's been part of a number one unit in the league. It just doesn't get the love it deserves. And now you're starting to see it really create havoc and come to fruition. So I think Eric Washington, even though he's been given a lot of assets and a lot of talent, he needs some credit for scheming these guys up and getting them to play right. And then the people questioning Brandon Beane all the time, like, yes, he makes mistakes. There are criticisms that you can go his way, but on the post-game show, Greg and I were going through like all the players that deserved credit for the game. And it was just a litany list of dudes drafted by Brandon Beane and re-signed by Brandon Beane and brought in as deal free agents by Brandon Beane. And so we can talk about he can't draft and his players don't contribute, but the evidence is there. Like this team just had a fantastic performance on both sides of the ball and special teams. And it was littered with guys that they've brought in and developed on their own. And so, yes, there's misses out there, but dude, this is one of the best rosters we've ever seen, and it was built by this guy. Like we need to chill on like seeking perfection all the time.
My good buddy Tone Pucks was on the show earlier this week, and he said that at the Miami game, he goes, "My game ball goes to Brandon Beane," because you look at this roster, and he's just straight out built a better and deeper roster than the Miami Dolphins.
We suffocate teams. Suffocate them.
Yeah. So and last point, then a quick break, then we'll talk Jacksonville. The coaching. I mean, I got to tell you, sometimes maybe I take coaching for granted, and I laugh because it's such a fickle league and we're all fickle fans, or at least a lot of us are anyway. And 6 months ago, I think 80% of Bills fans, whether they admit it or not, would have traded Sean McDermott for Brian Daboll. I think if they had that opportunity, the coaching that Sean McDermott's done with this defense, the matchups, and we don't need to get in the woods again because that game's kind of old news at this point, but just the matchups that he created, the confusion for Tua on the defensive side of the ball, and then the offense just finding a way to more effectively run the football, spread it out, get Josh Allen to chill out and calm down, but take his shots when they're there. The Dorsey and McDermott as coordinators, I'm talking about McDermott, I just don't know how you could do a better job than they did against Miami. Everything came to fruition to me against Miami, and maybe that's because everybody was just picking Miami all week long and saying they were going to beat the Bills. The coaching was just ridiculously good.
I mean, again, in the post I was doing and talking about people that deserve credit that don't get enough of it, Ken Dorsey, you had somebody complaining that Ken Dorsey was scheming Gabe Davis too open in this game. And we hear so much the lead up to this game, super frustrating for me, Pat, and the way people talked about Vic Fangio, this defensive genius, this wizard. And I like Vic Fangio. This is no disrespect to him. I think he's a good coach. I think he has a legendary place as a coach in the NFL. Like people respect him. They love him. But then you hear the way the same people that were talking about this guy and worried about him as a defensive genius were also shitting and running Leslie Frazier out of town. And they're basically the same dude. Like good defensive coordinators in the NFL who have had some success with good talent around them. Like Vic Fangio's okay, but he's not some crazy genius. But if you want to call him a genius, then you need to go give Ken Dorsey all the flowers in the world right now, because he had this defensive genius running in circles, not even knowing what to do on his heels. It did. And then I will give credit to McDaniel. I am a big hater of his. I think his personality is pretty phony. I think he's a dweeb who tries to pretend he's like a cool guy, and I don't think it's sincere. I don't think it's real. Just be yourself, dude. Like you're super smart. You're a really good offensive genius. I do believe he's a genius. Sean McDermott showed who he is this week. And I don't know if the lip reading was true after the game, McDaniel going up to him being like, I respect the, explicitive out of you. Fans on the internet have no idea how well respected Sean McDermott and his defense is around the NFL. Like in NFL circles, he's considered that Mike McDaniel of the defensive side of the ball, and we don't appreciate it at all on the whole. Like, we just see this, oh, it's zone and they give up a lot of catches, but consistently in DVOA, they're at the top. Consistently in defensive points scored, they're at the top. Like, ever since McDermott has got here, they don't give up explosive plays. And the modern NFL built on explosive plays. Yes, sometimes they've run into the greatest quarterback of all time, Patrick Mahomes, in the most explosive offense and had a bad day. That is going to be the NFL. But on the whole, over the average, Sean McDermott's defense is the way we praise Mike McDaniel and that offense never goes to the guys on defense that are just revolutionary for their time. And people say you can't win with defensive coaches, but history's littered with really great head coaches that come from a defensive background and have been able to be good for decades.
As we turn our attention here to London and the Jacksonville game, you were talking about earlier how Jacksonville has already been in London and they stayed there for the week. How much of an advantage do you think that is? The only thing I've heard people say where maybe it wouldn't be an advantage is that players, when they're gone for that long overseas, that they're starting to think about getting home. I really don't buy that. I just think it's a big advantage for Jacksonville. Do you think it's almost to the point that it's unfair? Do you think that's a big deal that they've gotten settled in and they've been there now for what, 11, 12 days?
I mean, I'm sure there's going to be literal data that the like body adjustment is probably a benefit to them. I'd be more upset if Jacksonville, I respect them. They have a number of guys that can make plays and stuff like that. I still expect the Bills to, just like we said a minute ago, the depth be so suffocating that over a 4-quarter period, even with the curve of travel and all that stuff, I think that the Bills would still be able to just come out and suffocate them. So it doesn't bother me in the terms of feeling like there's some real big time unfair advantage. If the Bills lose, I'll definitely build it into my excuse. But this is the problem with the whole London thing in general, especially with Jacksonville so closely attached to it every single year. I think you do build up probably even just organizationally a competitive advantage of they know what they're doing every year in and year out. This is the first time for a lot of Brandon Beane's staff of arranging an entire NFL organization going overseas onto new facilities and trying to maintain as much normal game week replicating as possible. It's a challenge. Anyone that's worked for any large organization knows moving all that. It's just the logistics side of that is something that stresses your organization, and maybe that doesn't touch the football field, but maybe it does. Like, I don't know, and I don't like losing those competitive advantages. So again, you're going to get me ranting today all about how much I hate this London series. But I ultimately this week, in terms of the matchup itself, I think the Bills roster is just going to be too overwhelming with depth, and that is probably a bigger benefit in these types of scenarios, is being able to roll out lots of defensive line and keeping guys fresh. And maybe if guys need a rest, you have the depth to sort of replace that.
I will say, and this is not necessarily to disrespect Jacksonville right now, because they were picked by most to win their division and be like a top 4 to 5 team in the conference. But this does feel on the surface, to the average person anyway, this has that word letdown written all over it. You go at home, the big showdown against Miami and Buffalo, you curb stomp Miami, and you got to get on a plane, you fly overseas, and you play a team that people perceive that you are definitely, and they are better from top to bottom than Jacksonville. I don't buy that. And the biggest reason why, the difference between this Bills team to me and maybe the Bills teams of, this Josh Allen era that have been very good, obviously. Right. I just feel like this team's tougher. I feel like the offensive line play is much better than it's been the last couple of years.
For sure.
And we already talked about how good the defensive line is. They're better in the trenches. And when you're better in the trenches, I think you're better suited to win some of the ugly games against good teams, or when the circumstances aren't advantageous to you. You know what I'm saying? That's kind of like why I don't feel like this has letdown written all over it, just because it's not because of Josh or Stephon or, the secondary making big plays, or Gabe Davis. I feel like in the trenches right now, the Bills are as good as they've been, and that matters.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think that's what you saw on display specifically against Miami, was the ability to create some physicality and establish it and maintain it when you're playing teams. And I would put Jacksonville's offense in this category, not so much their defense, but when you're playing teams that are finesse, they can win a lot of games. You can win a lot of games with finesse in this league. But I think the Bills can match some finesse and keep it in front of them, and they've been able to sort of do that for the most part this whole McDermott run. But when you also have the physicality up front to punch a team in the mouth and continue to keep punching, I think that wears on a team for 4 quarters, especially a finesse team. And I look at this Jacksonville offensive line, watching them back, and even the data sort of shows it. And I look at the way that the Bills defensive line, what we just talked about, the interior defensive line specifically, man, I just see a feasting afternoon. And if you do that straight for 4 quarters, like, yeah, maybe Jacksonville gets a play or two and they're going to put some points on the board, right? Like they have playmakers, they're going to do some stuff, but over 4 quarters, I cannot see the way their offense is playing, putting together 4, 5, 10 to 12 play drives against this Bills defense, which is what you're going to need, I think, to combat the scoring that the Bills offense can do right now. Again, to your point of being able to establish the run, that last week wasn't the best ground game performance we've seen. It was a pretty average performance on the ground for the Bills, but they got it when they needed it. When it was 3rd and 2, Latavius Murray's just picking up 6. Like they have a balanced run game that can hit you with multiple ways, multiple styles of backs that can create some big explosive plays. And so now you got to play it all. And I think that, again, over a 4 quarter period, I think it's going to be overwhelming for Jacksonville. I think right now, the way the Bills are playing, teams need to put together 4 or 5 scoring drives to even just be competitive to match what the Bills are going to score. And I think that's going to be real hard to do against this Bills defense.
You know, I got my ass up early last Sunday to watch that Jacksonville Atlanta game in London, kind of with the goal of, I mean, I love watching football, but
scouting,
also, yeah. I kind of wanted to see, learn a little bit about Jacksonville. But honestly, I concluded that I didn't really.
You just wanted to watch the Toy Story.
I did watch a little bit of that. The only thing I did conclude from that game that my takeaway is that Desmond Ridder is just fucking terrible, the Atlanta quarterback. So I really didn't.
How about Bijan though?
Huh?
Yeah, I like Bijan, dude.
Atlanta's got a good roster. Yeah. They just suck at quarterbacking. You're not going to win when your quarterback's your worst player. But anyway, one shout out I do got to give on the Jacksonville team, which, by the way, as this Bills schedule goes on, we're starting to see how many dominant defensive linemen there are. Because it feels like every week there's somebody who can wreck a game. It was Max Crosby. We talked about that when we did the Cover One show live downtown before the home opener. Max Crosby could wreck a game. Well, he didn't. Chase Young, he could wreck a game. Well, he didn't. Miami's got Christian Wilkins, one of the best interior guys in the NFL, not to mention Bradley Chubb. Yeah. I thought they were pretty irrelevant. I don't think they did shit on Sunday. This week is Josh Allen, not the Bills' Josh Allen, Jacksonville's Josh Allen. He had 3 sacks last week and a strip sack fumble. He's got 6 sacks already this season.
Yeah.
A couple years ago, he was the better on that day. He was the best Josh Allen on the football field that specific day.
That was a really
ugly ass Bills game. Yeah. Really bad day for the Bills. But this guy is one of those guys yet again where you look at the opponent, it's like, if you're not careful with this guy and you're not giving him attention, you're not doing your job, he can make it a long, I should say morning for us watching it. But he's dangerous. He might be the most dangerous player on this team as far as I'm concerned.
Their defense is going to definitely be their strength and their ability to get some turnovers. I think their coverage has actually been pretty good on the backside, even though they don't.
Andre Cisco's been really good.
Cisco's been good. They don't have like the household names in the defensive back unit, I have a lot of work to do here. Again, we're recording here Wednesday. I still got a show to do and still have a lot of work to do. I was primarily on the offensive side of the ball this week, so I'm still working in that defensive side of the ball here, but to me, it seems the strength, right? And that's if they can get some of those pressures to turn into plays that Josh Allen is making. But again, I don't overall. Yeah, Josh Allen, the Jaguars, Josh Allen, he can do that. But to your point, Max Crosby could too. Commanders had a plethora of those guys. Miami has those guys, and I think in more so than Jacksonville does. And so Jacksonville's defense playing overall pretty well within the scheme, but I do think Buffalo, the way they're playing and the way this line is playing, you can scheme up kind of at least keeping Josh Allen at bay. He's still probably going to get some looks. But the way the Bills' Josh Allen is playing in the pocket and the poise that he's playing with, I actually took a bit of offense to the way Chris Sims and Coward and all these knucklehead national media dudes are talking about Josh and still using the words like, oh, he tiptoed and bordered the line of playing recklessly but perfectly. And it's like, you go watch that tape back. There wasn't a snap where I saw any bit of reckless or bad decision-making with the ball. But I will tell you right now, the guy that we praise for being perfect and precise and the perfect driver of an offense, Tua, put up a bunch of balls that got batted and put into coverage and probably should have had another 2 to 3 turnovers in that game. So let's stop with the nonsense. Like Josh Allen can play a very methodical style of football. We've seen it. He can play within the offense. And I just think that if you do that against this team, they don't have the depth again to deal with what the Bills can put out on the field. And so I don't think you have to do too much. Just play within the offense. I think Ken Dorsey can scheme up some stuff for these playmakers. And again, I just don't think on the other side of the ball that if Bills come out and put together those 4 or 5 scoring drives, which I think they can do, I don't think Jacksonville can match it.
You talked about Jacksonville being able to take the ball away in the defense. My favorite Buffalo Josh Allen stat might be 2 of the last 3 games that he's played, he hasn't even thrown a turnover-worthy pass, let alone throwing an interception in 2 of those last 3 games. He's only got 1 pick in his last 3 games, and that was a third down.
So he's due. He's due for something.
All right, I guess you can look at it.
He's gonna have bad game. Like he's gonna have some of these games. As long as it's not those. As long as we're done with those like Jaguars games of the past where you can't score, like you're struggling to get possessions where you can score. We got to be past those games. This Bills team, the way they're built and the way this offense is and how good everybody's playing needs to be able to put 3 scores on the board almost every game.
Yeah. Jacksonville's they're like a paper team to me, like a Madden team. Like offensively, Trevor Lawrence, they got great weapons, Ridley and Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram and
Zay Jones plays good football now since he left the Bills.
Yeah, a lot of good weapons on that team, man. But they're also really inconsistent. They're 2-2. They beat Indy and some other bummy ass team. And then they lost to Kansas City on the road, which was a pretty good game for Jacksonville. But then they got smacked at home against Houston. So it's like, what is this team? I don't know, man.
To your point about the trenches, that's on the offensive side of the ball. That's where I did most of my work. From the work I did, dude, that offensive line, I really think that's where this game for me, this might be the one where I predict the biggest spread, even though it's not in Vegas, because I think the Buffalo Bills defensive line, the way they're playing right now, is going to make it a very long day for Trevor Lawrence. Even though he's mobile and stuff, he is going to feel so much pressure. I also think McDermott might sprinkle in a little bit more blitz. Like they're going to get some pressure on him. If you get heat on Lawrence, he's going to scramble around a little bit and put up some bad balls. I really think the Bills are going to be able to get in on him. And until they get that offensive line playing better, you can have all these weapons and stuff like that. And maybe you can get some explosives and play in a game and still be competitive. I'm not saying this is a bad team, but if you get overwhelmed and beat up and punched in the face in the trenches, it's, to your point, it's hard to win in the NFL in 4-quarter games, man.
Greg and Aaron will have a much more thorough Bills Jacksonville preview on their Cover One channel. By the time you're watching or listening to this, that'll be out. So make sure you go check that out. Not going to bother asking you for a prediction because I already know where that's going. I will say, last point about this game, it's always for me been about Josh Allen and the offense and Stephon Diggs. And
right,
I'm at a point now where I feel like even if they don't play well, the defense is good enough to just win a game. And I kind of feel like that might be the case in London. Like, I'm not saying the offense is going to go there and suck, but I could see them scoring maybe in the mid-20s, the Bills, but still winning by 1 or even maybe 2 scores just because I think the defense is playing on such a high level. But like I said, go check out their show. They'll have much more on that game. Let's have a little bit of fun like we usually do to end this show. My topic this week, I wanted you to come up with a starting 5. I want your most overrated TV shows. And yes, for people bitching, this has got nothing to do with sports, and I really don't give a shit at this point. But what are a couple of your most overrated TV shows?
I don't even know if I got a full 5 here, but I will start with, I think what triggered this for you was I had a tweet the other day talking about, I hate this idea that just because something's popular that it's good. Yep. And so Big Bang Theory came up for me as one that
this is what triggered my idea.
Is proof that things can be popular and not good. Like Big Bang Theory is pretty whack. The fact that big media, conglomerate media haven't realized that form of sitcom is dead. Like people don't want to watch that version of sitcom, and they just keep pounding it home. And the weird thing is that it still does numbers. Like it's very concerning for me, for society, that some of these dumb shows in the old style that just don't hit anymore. The comedy doesn't hit, and doesn't sustain the way others do, is still a thing. So that bothers me. Big Bang's up there. Well, I think we will have a disagreement on this one. Stranger Things is up there for me. Good first season, but I'm so sick of people shoving nostalgia down my throat. Like I like nostalgia, I like vintage, I like retro. It felt like they just leaned into nostalgia too much. They had a good first season and a good script. It got picked up. It probably got more popular than they thought because nostalgia is a drug, and it hit the spending capital people the most, your generation, your Star Wars generation there, and people loved it and they had drifted towards it, but then they just drew it out.
Agreed.
And it got terrible as it went. Don't like it at all. I thought it got way too much hype as the seasons continued on, and it got worse and worse, and you could tell that they were just like grasping to keep this money bag going. I hate that stuff, that we could just let things be, have a good season, maybe 2, wrap it up nice, and just let it be its thing. Like, it doesn't have to continue on. Another one, Squid Games. I just thought it was weird, and when it was done, I felt like I wasted my time over nothing. And so I didn't get that hip trend. Orange is the New Black.
Ooh.
Was another one that I thought was a total waste of time. Not deep, not a great storyline.
It fell off. I
fell off.
to agree.
The main character was so unlikable and
interesting early. It fell off. Yeah.
Such little interest in the main character. They whiffed. But it somehow became super cool because, like, I think it was just during this like binging Netflix when they were dropping series and stuff, and House of Cards was out, and you could just binge series. Mm-hmm. Like, just got caught up in all that, and it's not that good.
You got to give me one more, man.
So this one actually I wanted to save for last because this one actually got me real mad because I was so excited for this show to come out. I read all the graphic novels. I loved every minute of it. This was when I was dating my now wife. She read the graphic novels, the first graphic novel share. She's like not a real book reader, and I got her to read this, and she loved it. And we got all excited for the premiere of The Walking Dead. And from the premiere, I was like 10 minutes into the premiere, I was like ranting. My typical old man yelling at the clouds, like, they're fucking ruining this. Like, I was so mad. The books, the graphic novels are so fantastic. It's such a cool world. I've read a bunch of graphic novels. It's one of my favorite series. And I just felt like they just messed it up for TV, and then people loved it. And it went on for so long. And I have friends that just absolutely love this show. And I can't stand how far they drifted from the book. I don't get why they do that for television. Station 11, I don't know if you saw that on HBO Max. That's another one that, like, fantastic book, and they just went off in another direction. I don't get it. So that one pissed me off.
You know what? One of the criticisms I get from some of my friends is they say I'm too agreeable with my guests on the show. Like, I never disagree that I agree too much. I actually agree with every single one you said, except maybe not Big Bang Theory. I thought that show was decent. But the other 4 that you said, Stranger Things, Squid Games, Orange is the New Black, Walking Dead, couldn't agree more. I'll be brief for this because we're short on time. My 5th, Grey's Anatomy. I hated that show, and it's so popular. Yeah. Whiny, depressive characters. I hate the narrative of Dr. Grey. Like, I actually want bad shit to happen to them. That's how much I don't like that show, and it's really popular. Number 4, and I'm going back in the vault for this one. Might catch a little bit of shit for it, but I never liked Married with Children. I loved Christina Applegate. She was hot, but besides her, I never thought Al Bundy was really that funny. Now, I will say at the time, he was a different character than anyone else. Aaron is looking at me stunned right now that I said this.
I love that show.
Peg was annoying as fuck, and I just never thought Al Bundy was really that funny. So there you go. We got a disagreement.
All right.
Number 3, I think you're watching this now, if I'm not mistaken, Succession. I don't think the show was that good. Now, the writing, the dialogue, epic. Some of the best TV writing that you'll ever see. But in terms of a drama, just shit didn't happen, man. I need some stuff to happen to be reeled in every now and then. I get it. It's not like it's storytelling. So not every episode is going to be like, oh my God, wow. You don't get a lot of that. Well, even like with The Sopranos, you would have stretches where nothing really happened. And then bam, you're like, oh, holy shit.
Right.
There's like maybe 4 or 5 things that happen in the entire series relevant to Succession. The rest is just a bunch of greedy, unlikable characters, which again, the writing was great, but it moved at a snail's pace. It lost me several times, and just not enough like, oh, wow moments, not even like, oh my God, but even like, wow. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I don't think I would have enjoyed it watching it as they came out.
Did you finish it?
No, we're close though.
Okay, so I was careful.
I
was careful to not give any spoilers of specific stuff, but that's just for me, man.
So far, I don't agree with you. Totally. I have issues with some of what I think was lazy storytelling and like drawing in the things over and over again, kind of digging back to the well a little bit on some things and how they set some stuff up. But I gave the show a chance, hated it after like 1 or 2 episodes, didn't go back to it. I think I've on this show said that. But right now I can't, like, I'm looking forward to, I'm a bum because we do our show tonight. And so my wife and I won't get to watch. But I'm excited to see how this I think I got like 3-4 episodes left.
I will say, and by the way, shout out Ashley Rowe, former Buffalo news anchor. She's on that, I think, second to last show. The last season was the best for me. And I'm not even complaining so much about the ending. I'm just complaining about the entirety of the series. It just didn't do it for me. Number 2, How I Met Your Mother. It just, it was funny for a while, but it was just the same old shit. At some point, I'm like, just find the mom already, Ted, and quit talking. And it's starting to annoy me. One of the worst endings of a TV series that I've ever seen. I think that show's overrated. And then number 1, I think a lot of people would agree with this, or you have one opinion one way or the other. Friends. Never liked Friends. Even back in those days, it's just that cast of characters. They never felt organic. Their friendship, the laughs, it all felt forced. Friends never resonated with me, man, at all, at any point. So I don't even know if you watched that show. You did? You liked it?
Dude, I was so invested in Ross and Rachel and that relationship. I liked Friends. I did. That whole lineup would be like Friends and then ER was on after Friends, and I loved ER.
Yeah, Friends, ER. Seinfeld was on that Thursday
and
night.
Then Letterman. That was
a legendary block, man. I don't know. Friends just never did.
Those were my night. It was like Thursday night, I think. It'd be Thursday night was Friends, ER, and then like my mom would let me stay up late and watch Letterman on those. And Letterman's I just go.
All right, guys, that's going to do it. Make sure you check out Aaron and Greg. Cover One Show. Check out Eric, Anthony Prohaska, all these guys. By the way, nobody breaks down film and has those shows. If you really want to get an education on these games that you watch on Sundays, make sure you go check them out. Thanks, buddy. It was always good having you on.
Hey, thank you, man.
All right, I'll be back one more episode actually tomorrow. So talk to you then.